What's up, everybody? It's Frederick Douglass Bussey here with you. Um, 5 minutes late because I had to fix my daughter an extra sandwich. She wanted a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and ate it in record time. So that cut into my time getting here. So I apologize for those of you who are expecting me to be on time, or maybe not expecting, but you judge people when they're late. And that's what I mean. So we're here for episode 68 of the Power Lunch Podcast, another Solocast. We've got some great guests that are coming up as well, scheduling some other people. But today you got me, and today's topic is going to be talking about money stories and how, as entrepreneurs, we all have these ideas about money and what it means and freedom and how money relates to that. And today we're going to talk about some of my money stories and some of the things that I've discovered and sharing that with clients and sharing that with you. And hopefully it's valuable for you. Before we get started, as always, the Power Lunch Podcast is sponsored by the 7-Figure Circle $1 Million Mastermind, which is my free Facebook group for 6 and 7-figure entrepreneurs who want to scale their businesses. And if that applies to you, then hop on over to the link in my Facebook page and join that as well. 7-figure, or just search 7-Figure Circle $1 Million Mastermind on Facebook. Also, it's sponsored by my book, Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within. It's available on Amazon for those who want to discover their superpower. What's unique about them, what allows them to be able to impact the world. And what I love about this whole concept, what's been transformative for me, is understanding how I have a unique and powerful gift and how I can build my life around that, right? And so instead of chasing purpose, I can live with the purpose that's built within me. And I would encourage you, if you've not yet had an opportunity to read it, to go check that out on Amazon as well. Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within. These are our sponsors. This is the Power Lunch Podcast, and it starts right now. So what sparked this conversation today was a conversation I was actually having with my coaches. I have a couple of coaches. And on our last coaching session, we were talking about money and we were just kind of reviewing some things. And one of the things that came up for me was the fact that I was having a weird experience, right? And so if you look at a lot of entrepreneurs online, if they're marketers or gurus or whatever the case may be, a lot of people are talking about taking private jets and flying all over the world, staying at exotic hotels, buying exotic cars, living in mansions or condos, this lavish lifestyle. And it's something that we all are programmed to aspire to and to want to have, right? And so, and another interesting thing is that I'm doing a $1 million year event on December 6th, where we're talking about how to build the blueprint for building a 7-figure business in 12 months or less, right? And so these are all things that are kind of in my world and in my space right now. But one of the challenges that nobody really talks about is what happens when you actually start making more money and what happens to you internally as you begin to process that whole thing about having more money and having more success. And what I tell people is that you don't realize that being successful is just as traumatic as being unsuccessful. Failing is hard, but being successful is a challenge because you have to deal with all the stuff that comes up once you have it. And I'm nowhere near as successful as I plan to be, or I'm on the way to being, right? But I'm more successful now and have more things than I've ever had before. And that's brought some things up. And so there is this weird sort of thing that starts happening when you start realizing, oh, I've got a little bit of money now. I've got some things that I can buy now, right? I've got maybe a bigger house or a bigger car. And so in the course of that conversation, talking to my coach, we started talking about An exercise that she gave me that I can do to be able to start dealing with the stories of money in my life. And a money story is just a narrative that we have around money. Whenever we have success, whenever we have financial gain, whenever we lose it, whatever the case may be, uh, we have this idea of what it means when we have money or when we don't have money. And those stories actually don't always revolve around money. In a lot of ways, they revolve around our identity because we think about the way we think about money is the way we think about ourselves. And so the biggest challenge that you have is really becoming more aware of what those stories are, becoming more aware of where those challenges lie, where those triggers are internally. Because if you're not aware, it's going to affect your business because you are your business, you're leading your business. And so it doesn't matter whether you have $100,000 company, $100,000 a year company, or a company that's making $100 million a year. We all have stories around money. And whether you were born into money or whether you were born penniless, you you have narratives that are going on internally and you are adjusting your world to match that narrative. And I'll give you an example of what I mean, right? So one of the points of this exercise was for me to make a list of every money story that I ever had from the time that I was born going forward, right? And when she first gave me the assignment, I started thinking every single one. I don't know how many. Maybe I have one or two. But once I started realizing that money stories are not just about money, but about all the ways that money affects you, all the ways that there's status and class and want and abundance or scarcity, depending on what that is, right? I'll give you an example. I grew up living in the South, all over the South. My father was a minister. And so he was not a televangelist or we didn't pastor a mega church, right? He pastors a series of small churches in Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama over a period of about 30 years. And so I grew up initially for about 10 years in Mississippi. We lived in two different places, Macomb and Cleveland, Mississippi. And when we lived in Cleveland, Mississippi, I remember, we used to love to play football. And we played on the street, we played two-hand touch, right? All the kids. There's a whole bunch of kids and we get out there and we play. And so sometimes when I wanted to play, I wanted to play football. I would just want to toss the ball around by myself or with my brothers in the backyard. But we never had a football. And so what we used to do was we had these pine trees that had these giant pine cones. I mean, giant. So when I'm saying they were literally the size of a football, that's what we would use, right? But the pine cone was prickly when it's fresh, when it drops down. So sometimes you have to like crush it just a little bit. You don't want it to shatter, but you have to crush it so that the needles wouldn't prick your hands when you're throwing it and trying to catch it. And so that narrative of not having the money to buy a football, asking my dad to buy a football, he had some ideas around me playing sports and stuff. Thought I was, kind of crazy about it, which I kind of was. Um, but the narrative that I had was that certain things we don't spend money on, right? And so I just had to kind of scrounge it around. Now, in one way, that makes me a scrappy entrepreneur to this day because I don't see having the proper tools as a barrier. And yet, and still, sometimes there are times when you need to make that investment. And so, where does your brain get wired to start thinking, I'm not going to spend money on this? Because we all see certain things and say, I'm not spending money on that. I remember Alex Hormozy was on the Lewis Howes School of Greatness podcast, and he's talking about a friend of his who had just recently gotten valued at $1 billion. He had sold his company or whatever, ton of money. And so the guy is saying he's not going to spend $200 a month on the Equinox gym, which is a high, if you know about Equinox, it's a high level gym in New York, right? A lot of famous people, celebrity people, upper class, that's the gym that they go to. He's not going to spend $200 a month, but he's worth $1 billion. That's part of his money story, right? The narrative that we have. Another story that I had growing up was that my father, it's interesting because, growing up in the 80s, there was no such thing really as an SUV. There were Jeeps, and then there was this very niche brand of a car called a Travelall International, right? Which is essentially like it looks like an old school Jeep Cherokee slash Range Rover slash whatever. I don't know how my father found out about this, but we were a family of six, me and my three siblings, and so my dad got this. He got this used old Travelall International. We used to love that thing because it was an SUV essentially, right? And we could all pile in there. We didn't have to just pile in the back or whatever. But I remember that the paint had all these cracks on the side, right? And so it was like a weird kind of avocado green and white or creamish. And so what my dad did was he got this paint and he would fill in the cracks, right? So that the paint looked a little bit more seamless. And as you're growing up, this is just one of the things that you kind of notice. We never had a brand new car. I never grew up with a brand new car, and there just wasn't money for that. Now we had several nice cars, and my dad was always great about washing them, keeping them clean. I learned to always preserve and take care of things, and that was something that I always took pride in, right? Washing the car and making sure it was nice. One of the challenges that you have is that when you're always used to just patching things up and you believe that you have to have them in a certain way, it creates a certain challenge. As my 4-year-old comes in to grab some paper. I'm doing a podcast. You want to draw in the other room and then come back? You want to share it with me? All right. Can you go so mommy doesn't get mad at me? Can you wipe your face? Because you just had a sandwich and then come back, okay? All right. So you got the money stories that are going on around having not had nice things, right? And so what does that mean for you when it's time for you to level up, when it's time for you to start making more money, right? The belief sometimes gets baked in that you don't deserve to have something that's nicer, something that's more, right? And inevitably, studies show that people who are more successful actually have a belief that they deserve these things, right? So if you don't believe you deserve something, you're actually creating a resistance within yourself to being more successful. And there are certain things that go along with that. If you have a business, you have a resistance to paying for certain things, making certain investments, hiring certain people, giving them certain resources because you don't believe that they deserve to have that money. Like, hey, I had to scruff and scrounge around to make things happen. Okay. So you have to make sure that you can scruff and scrounge. You had to do that when you were growing up. So why don't they do that then? And a lot of entrepreneurs are bootstrapping their businesses. They're against taking on investment, against finding other people that can support them in what they're doing. That's always a challenge for them. And so what we get to look at is, where are those stories of money playing a role in our lives? I'm always curious when I interview entrepreneurs on this podcast, where have those money stories showed up for them? How did they see themselves in terms of whether they were an entrepreneur or not? How resourceful they had to be. Most of us aren't born into a lot of money. Statistically, 1% of the 1% is there because they make more money. And so that means that most people don't have those resources or that relationship with wealth and understanding of it. And I remember I posted the other day, we fixate on this idea now of financial literacy. Everyone should be financially literate. And financial literacy is literally the baseline, right? It's literally being able to, maybe it's setting a budget and understanding certain basic things about savings accounts and credit and things of that nature. But there's a whole nother advanced level that people are playing at. And if you ever want to get to that level, you have to be able to deal with your money stories, your money issues. See, money is a resource, and some people call it energy. Some people just call it a resource or a tool, or whatever the case may be. you're not going to be able to make more of it or do more with it until you have an understanding of how you feel about it and how it makes you feel about yourself. And one of the things that I realized over time was that I was having a challenge with making more of it because of what it meant. If you grow up um, in the South and you're poor and black, or you're middle class and black, then having more money is something you aspire to, but having more money can separate you from the people that you love and you know the most. It can leave you disoriented when you feel like you're leaving your community. And this can happen for anyone when they feel like they are just being separated because they have raised up in status. And when you elevate in status, the air gets thinner, the crowd gets smaller, the circle gets smaller because not everyone is able to go there. And there's a burden on a lot of us who become more successful to feel like they have to support everyone in their circle. And that's not always possible. It's not always possible because there's a shift that you have to make when it comes to making more money, a way that you're thinking about things, a way that you think about how you're going to invest or save or to grow what you've gotten. And so those money stories are important. They matter. And if you're not able to get a hold on that and have a self-awareness around what that means, then it's going to restrict you. So circling back, so we, like I said, we have a event coming on December 6th, the $1 Million Year, the blueprint for building a seven-figure business in 12 months or less, right? And I'll drop a link below this for you so you can register. It's going to be an amazing event. We're inviting over 500 entrepreneurs to be there with us in the room. We're going to share this virtually and really break down a lot of those things that are in the way and how you can create that structure and framework to be able to accelerate your business success. And one of the things that I know that people may be resistant to is just the idea itself of having $1 million year, right? People will say over and over again, it's not about the money. I just want to be able to make an impact. It's not about the money. I just want to be comfortable. It's not about the money. But anytime you have to qualify a statement, especially around business, and you're saying it's not about the money, and what you're really saying is, I don't feel comfortable making it about money. I don't feel comfortable having that conversation talking about money. I don't feel comfortable with people thinking that I am a certain level of success when it comes to finances and things of that nature. You're having that tell, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just needs to be an awareness of it, because if you're not, then you're not going to be aware of the fact that it's blocking you from really doing that. Because $1 million is not what it used to be. And $1 million is just a marker. It's just a measure of you being able to accomplish a certain set of goals, being able to create a certain amount of impact, being able to execute in your business at a certain level of efficiency. And if you're not able to do that, you need to understand why. Especially when you start thinking about all the other things that come up. Because if you are a person that has other people that are looking up to you, a family of little ones, a wife or a husband, if you've got elderly parents that need to be taken care of, and you're not thinking about how you can continually expand your resources to be able to support the people that you need without it dragging you under, then you are going to be in jeopardy of being able to not only do the things that you want to do, but that word of freedom and impact is going to start evaporating before your very eyes. Every time there's an unexpected expense, every time there's a fire that needs to be put out, every time there's additional stress, and these stresses occur because if you don't have the ability to be able to walk away from your business for an hour, for a day, for a week, to go on vacation, to take care of some other thing that's coming up, to take care of someone that you really you love and care about, to be able to do it for whatever reason. Let's say you get sick. I had one of my clients who tore his Achilles last week and had to have surgery yesterday. Right? So when these things happen, when life happens, what are you going to be able to do about it? And so the greater capacity you have to be able to deal with that and absorb that, the greater you're going to be able to weather these storms. And storms are coming, right? Many people know that we're in a storm right now economically, but there's all kinds of storms that happen politically, socially, personally, financially, whatever the case may be, you got to be able to weather those things. And how are you navigating it? So for those of you who are watching this live on Facebook or LinkedIn, or even on YouTube, let me know what your thoughts are. What are some of the money stories that you have? What are some of the things that you've discovered? Maybe you've been lingering under the surface. What are some thoughts about making money or growing, and maybe you find yourself being stuck and trying to figure out how you're going to navigate and move past that? Because if you're not where you want to be, or if there's somewhere else that you want to go, another level, another gear that you want to kick it into, being able to unlock that and uncover that is going to be a crucial thing. If you don't know what your money story is, you need to be thinking about that. Because also, as you grow in your team, as you're building a culture in your business, all of those things are going to matter, right? They matter to the people that are going to be your executives, all the way down to the people who are the janitors. And so those money stories, the culture that you tell, the stories you tell around money, about being able to be successful, right? The scorecard that you print things on is going to be really, really important. And so knowing how to manage that and deal with that is going to be super, super important. So with that being said, I want to hopefully see each and every one of you there for this amazing event as we continue to lean forward and end this year. I'm really, really grateful as we're entering the holiday season. Thanksgiving is tomorrow as I'm taking this live. And I'm really, really grateful for that. And hopefully each and every one of you is going to be having a great holiday as well. Let me know what you're discovering in the comments below. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe. Make sure that you are sharing this with those that you find valuable in your life. And let me know what you're discovering from this whole process as well. All right. My name is Frederick Douglass Bussey. This has been episode 68 of the Power Lunch Podcast. And as always, ever forward.